You are listening to the Brain Software Podcast coming from Toronto, Canada. This is your all-inclusive vacation spot to the finest discussion on hypnosis, NLP, and personal development. Today, Chris and Mike, that's us, help you to build a life of quality. So stay tuned.
Eddie M! I got your horrible little dog, too! You'll never get out of Oz!
Wrong again. My little dog is awesome, and he's safe with me.
Damn right he is, Scro. Why can't people just chill out and be with the groove, man? Hey, Chris, what do you say? You ask the magic question everyone's scared to ask, Peck.
Sure thing, Dave. Whatever happened to that old tranquility we used to know?
These are days of victory!
So welcome, boys and girls, cats and snails, to the only podcast you will ever need. We've got a potentially life-changing show for you all today. So without further ado, let's welcome to the potentially life-changing center of the hypnotic world epicenter, the hypnotic hell driver himself, the mesmeric mastermind of mellowness, and a man who will never wear a breech clout. Mike Mandel!
Yes, Chris, no breech clouts. I'm going to be using that word a lot. The word makes me laugh.
Do you want to talk about what it means?
Well, when I first heard... No, I don't. When I first heard of it, it was in a Conan the Barbarian book years ago. It talked about his breech clout. In fact, I think the author spent a bit too much time describing it. So,
What are you looking at? What are you crazy looking at me? You should be looking at my sword.
That didn't sound right. The
No,
sword
not
part.
at all.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So, we're here. We have decided to conclude our mini-series on communication strategies, and we're moving on to a podcast on quality of life. Now,
Yeah.
if we want to extend it, we may. We'll see. It may just be a one-off, but feel free to suggest additions, ask questions, etc. before we dive into a really good episode on a really good show on quality of life. We want to talk about Wizard School, which is coming up. We've got a few spots left, probably, 7 at this point?
I think we got 7 spots left,
We would like to cap the class at about 30 people. Anyway, you can check it out on our events page, mikemandelhypnosis.com/events. But to keep the promo short, Mike, say a couple of sentences about Wizard School.
the thing is, Chris, I've wanted to teach these techniques for years. We're going to provide wizard tools for the people who come out. And if you're an experienced hypnotist, we'll show you how to do regression work properly, how to get to cause of events, how to do proper ideomotor work, and really, really amazing ego state work on yourself as well as others.
April 27th and 28th in Toronto. Check it out. Okay, the other thing we wanted to talk about before we begin is we got a really great email from Dominic, who said that it's totally okay for us to talk over each other once in a while because it doesn't sound like a canned freaking podcast. Which now is a great time to bring up one of our favorite new interventions. Which is finishing somebody else's sentence. And you don't actually have to finish their entire sentence. You just use the last sound. Like that.
It annoys people. I find it really funny. Okay, never mind.
You can always figure out what the word is going to be at the very end of a sentence, right? And then you
Yeah.
can just use that sound. I did that to my wife today just to break her out of a
Hey,
bad
don't
state.
admit
And
it
it was
too
really
much.
funny. Okay.
Hey, let's just say, how does this whole thing about quality of life fit in? Well, we are a hypnosis and NLP and personal development podcast. So this fits fully into the personal development aspect.
Absolutely. And I think that as a hypnotist, if you're a hypnotist and you're helping your clients, it is incumbent upon you to help them live a better life. That's why they're coming to you. They are often coming to you because they think, okay, well, I'm going to go to see a hypnotist. I'm going to get some sort of magical wand-waving procedure happening inside of my brain, and it's going to get fixed.
Magical wand waving
waving-
procedure
yeah, there you go.
happening inside of my brain.
I just made that up. So just think about yourself as a people helper. So if you have skills to help people, hey, why not use them on yourself too? Right?
Yeah, no kidding.
Makes sense. Kind of makes sense. The other thing we wanted to quickly say before we begin is that we have made our conversational hypnosis training app and course completely free.
That's right.
So if you want to go check it out, it's at mikemandelhypnosis.com/nuvi-course.
And
Now,
NUVI is NUVI.
Exactly. NUVI stands for nominalization, unspecified verb, induction. So NUVI. So MikeMandelHypnosis.com/NUVI Course, Course, for those who can't spell. Okay, so with that said, we are going to continue.
Right,
and
Chris,
we're
let's
gonna
go
do
right to the think tank word of the day, because I got the think tank out when we were working on the podcast notes. Spun the magic dials.
And somebody asked, what is this think tank? It's actually a physical thing with a bunch of words inside of it, right? And you spin it.
Savo Bokacek
sort of like
invented it using Edward de Bono's lateral thinking. It is all words on little plastic chips, and it's inside, the words are inside a spherical thing with two knobs on the outside and a window. So you turn the knobs, and these bars inside these mixing devices stir the damn words up, and you look at whatever becomes visible in the front. So if you're trying to solve a problem, working on a problem, you can use whatever words show up. For example, when Savo Bokacek invented it, he had trouble getting the words to mix. The bars inside the framework kept jamming when he turned the dials. So he asked the think tank how to fix itself.
And the word was?
Bent.
Bent.
And so he took it apart and bent the rods inside, and now it stirs everything perfectly.
Isn't that
So
interesting?
it's just amazing. So
it's a creativity tool.
Right. We draw a real word from it every time, and the word this time is castle. So what does castle say to you?
Mike, this is hilarious because just yesterday I got another one of those emails that comes in every so often from
You're kidding.
somebody who has purchased either the stress relief or the memory power or the peak performance recording and said, which recording takes me to the castle? Because the introduction, well, there's basically, for those unfamiliar, there's a trance induction that Mike uses that takes you on this kind of a walkway.
Inner journey, yeah.
I was going to say, I don't know, whatever. Whatever I was going to say is irrelevant. The takes you on a walkway, and you go down a path towards a sandy beach or whatever it is, but there's always one direction that leads you up towards a castle.
Which you don't go on.
Which there is no recording that actually takes you to, ever. And so we're very tempted to create it at some point. But what does castle mean? I think of it as something that is powerful, but has this awesome vantage point. Like you're elevated, and so you can see everything. And it's a position of power.
That's nice. I think of it in terms of chess. When
the
you
rook.
castle, it becomes a safety move. So you're moving your king to safety while bringing a rook probably to an open file down through D or E, so you can dominate the game. So castling not only brings you to safety, but it makes your position stronger and more powerful as well. So again, we're getting this whole idea of strength and power.
So what does castle mean to you, the listener? Think about it.
I think of White Castle hamburgers in the U.S.
Oh, okay. All right, let's move on then.
Well, I started, Chris, with this framework of making your life work, which is what people talk about. But I like to make my work life instead.
Yeah, this concept of having a quality life really revolves around making sure that when you're spending time, because your life is about time, you only have a certain amount of it, and it's important to ensure that what you're doing with that time is quality stuff. And what are the attributes of quality? Well, things that, when we talk about physical things, it's about something that's going to last a long time or that we're going to enjoy using, like quality. We talked about this yesterday, right, when we were planning this podcast, Mike. If you are going to spend a lot of time on your feet, it is probably a good idea to wear good quality shoes that are comfortable. Or it might be, in the case of, let's say, a professional environment, shoes that look really good with that suit.
Right.
Something impressive to you, to others, but also comfortable. If you're
Or
going to
how much time you spend sleeping, you mentioned that one before.
If you spend 1/3 of your life sleeping, which is, the healthful recommendation, that 8 hours a day, right? Well, it probably makes sense not to sleep on a lumpy sofa, but on a comfortable mattress, right? If you're going to spend a lot of time, as many people do, in front of a computer, and Mike, you just learned this lesson finally. If you're going to spend a lot of time on a computer, it makes sense to have a good quality computer, and not just the computer, but your monitor. I mean, I remember years ago when we first got, I don't know what it was, the 17-inch VGA color monitor.
Oh, gosh, I remember that.
Oh, my goodness, this is amazing, right? And now, because I spend a lot of time working on my computer, I got myself this nice 27-inch cinema display from Apple.
Is that a Retina display?
I don't think this one is.
Yeah,
it's a few years old.
It seems kind of blurry.
And I would,
compared to mine.
if I thought that upgrading it would build better better quality into my life, I would upgrade it in a second. But I love this thing. It's fantastic. And you were on a really old Windows computer for a long time.
running
And what
Windows
did you tell
7.
me after you got a Mac? How long did you say it took to boot up that Windows machine when you needed to access a file on it?
I actually checked it. I actually timed it. And to boot the machine up from completely cold before everything stopped spinning and loading took 40 minutes.
Which is nuts, right? Now, as much as we're joking about it and
feel
saying
myself
buy a
getting
Mac,
tense.
the
Yeah.
reality is it's not about Mac or PC or anything like that. It's simply
is.
we're using this as a metaphor to
Right.
paint the picture that there's another metaphor for you.
Yeah. Paint the
If,
picture.
if computer work is an important part of your life and you stop and think about it and go, yeah, my machine's a piece of crap. It's 8 years old. It's got all kinds of malware on it. It takes 45 minutes to reboot and then it just crashes. Maybe it would be a good idea to fix that problem, right? Because you're wasting a whole lot of time to have a crappy experience. Similarly, right now, Mike, you came to my house today and the front porch, there's this horrendous water damage that's caused the concrete to start peeling away.
No, it's a lawsuit waiting to happen.
Yeah,
buddy.
we're not going to leave it that way, right? Because it's just not a nice thing to walk out the front door and be reminded every single time that this just looks like crap.
So we're back to putting order
Right.
where chaos exists now.
Right. Chaos is this natural thing that creeps in, and we want to build order back into our lives.
We're back to the second law of thermodynamics. I mean, rooms become dirty and messy. Rooms
Oh,
don't
you're talking
clean
about
themselves.
entropy?
Yeah.
Is it the third law?
The
or
second
I can't
law,
remember.
I
It's
think,
not
is
whatever.
entropy,
It's
yeah.
one of the laws of thermodynamics is the law of entropy, which is that
Chaos creeps in.
right, you are always facing the fact that things are moving towards higher levels of entropy, higher levels of disorder, disorganization.
It's what happens to a breach cloud if you don't wash it.
Oh, that's very horrible, Mike.
Hilarious stuff.
So, not to beat this to death, but the
As we
idea
are.
that you have physical things in your life that you probably realize already makes sense to have quality shoes, quality bed. If you wear glasses, quality glasses, because every time your eyes are open, you're looking through these lenses, right, in order to see better. Well, dirty glasses, scratched glasses that don't fit you well, that wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. Or clothes that look good on you, that fit well, that make you feel good
your
about
best.
yourself.
Yeah.
Or, if we're approaching the springtime here, the sun's going to start to come out. We enjoy having nice patio furniture that we can hang out on as a family, right? So you've got this physical stuff. Well, what about all the other things in your life?
Well, is this where Pareto's principle is going to come in? The 80-20 rule.
Yeah, so you can 80-20 almost anything, right? And so there's this concept from Pareto that about 80% of the results in your life are going to come from 20% of the things, or 20% of the effort, or 20% of
And this applies across the board, doesn't it? I know they say in a committee, 20% of people will tend to do 80% of the work.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm surprised that it doesn't work that way with our podcast, where 20% of the people do 80% of the talking. But since there's only two of us, I guess that doesn't make sense, right?
There's a horrible slight there somewhere. I haven't figured out what it is.
The
though.
rule does apply, though. If you look at, let's say you were to do some sort of listener analysis to our
Right.
podcast, probably 20% of the episodes get 80% of the interest.
Yeah, that's true, isn't it?
Right?
Yeah.
So there you go.
And then 20% of those that are listened to are actually worth listening to.
No, okay, that's really horrible.
And
That's-
20%.
Oh.
Infinite regression.
On a scale of 8 to 10, Mike, how depressed are you about that?
10. It's a 10 right now. Definitely a 10.
Okay, so what are we talking about?
Well, here's one of the things that I wanted to add to this whole quality of life discussion. I thought this on the way here, driving into Hypno East from Toronto, which is about an hour-long, very pleasant drive. And I remembered, Chris, in 1970, I was with a band called Armpit.
Armpit?
Yeah, and we did some stuff by The Who and some stuff from Tommy the Rock Opera and so on. We performed at my high school, which is Wexford Collegiate for the Performing Arts now. It's an art school. It's amazing. And we were kind of a weird group of guys where people like Larry would give us wonderful lines like "a lie well told is practically the truth," stuff like that. Told people he had a pet cat called Corky, and he had a little comb, and he taught him to comb his whiskers, and afterwards he'd offer you his comb. I mean, the bizarre guys I hung with. So in 1970, we did a gig at Wexford for their variety show at night. Well, in the year 2000, so we're talking 30 years later, I came back to school and did a cameo. I did Human Lie Detector for the same variety show. So 30 years later, and it was a blast. I was back on the same stage I had been on. And here's why it freaks me out. I just realized on the way here, that was 19 years ago.
Yeah.
So 30 years from high school to doing that. Now it's 19, almost 20 years later from that. This has gone in a blink. And that whole thing about the perception of time is a huge thing. So I'm going to be 66 next month. I said my dad
day
died
after Wizard School.
Day
ends.
after Wizard School. My dad died at 57. My mom died at 53. And none of us know how much time we have. But if we recognize that we have a finite amount of time, surely we would invest it more carefully than we do.
Yeah, this is the thing, that we all have exactly the same number of hours in a day. We don't all have the same number of years in our life. We are obviously in control of living as healthful life as we can, or choosing not to, and choosing to live in the moment and eat all kinds of crap and not exercise.
Right.
And, then we get chronic disease and we die early. But bottom line is, at least with respect to time in a week or time in a day, we all have the same number of hours and get to choose how we spend them. So let's spend them wisely, right?
Yeah, it's what's that old line? It said, "Yesterday is a canceled check. Tomorrow is a promissory note. Today's the only cash you have.
So spend it wisely."
Well done, Chris.
Yes,
well done.
I,
Do you know who said that?
Well, I learned it from you.
We just said it.
You learned
you
it
recognize
from...
our voices?
Yeah, that's good. We just said... Where did you learn that?
Well, it's that kind of obvious thing. The Irishman in a bar orders a pint of Guinness. This is St. Patrick's Day. I heard this fabulous. Drinks it down, sits there sort of daydreaming. Bartender comes over, says, "You've got an empty glass." Oh, he says, "Your glass is empty. Would you like another one?" The Irishman said, "What would I do with 2 empty glasses?"
Would you like another? Okay, I love how you don't answer the question at
No,
all.
it was a good pattern interrupt, though. Look at that bird on Mrs. Coulthard's roof.
Yeah.
So,
when we say all of this, we're challenging you to start thinking about where in your life you're lacking quality right now.
Definitely,
Now,
yeah.
a lot of the time, so we talked about the physical stuff, right? The shoes, the bed, the patio furniture, clothes that you wear, whatever it is, computers. What is it that you're doing for income? Almost everybody is doing something for income, right? Is it something that you enjoy? Is it something that you consider quality time in your life? So if you're, and I'm not to pick on, let's say you're a taxi driver. If you love driving people around and having conversations with people, then that's wonderful.
yeah, more power to you.
But if you are a taxi driver and you constantly say to yourself, "I freaking hate all these idiots who get in my car and they're demanding," and maybe they are. I'm not judging whether you're right or wrong in making that assumption. I'm just asking you to imagine putting yourself in that position of, imagine that that's your job,
Right.
and you hate it. Then maybe it's equivalent to having Mike's PC that takes 45 minutes to boot up.
Well, yeah, and what you're saying is it's that initial phrase we had. Is it making your life work? No, it's making your work life. Finding the life in your vocation. Was it Aristotle who said if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life?
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah, but it's funny, and we have to keep moving. I say we always present a moving target, but many years, almost 45 years on stage, and I put that behind me a year ago, and I'm thrilled that I did. It was fun for most of the time, but I'm way more enjoying what we're doing now than being on stage, ever.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
we have to make shifts. We have to, if we hate our vocation, if we hate our relationships, if we hate
That's another
the
big
time
one.
we spend on this planet, we got to change things because the clock is ticking.
So the challenge for you is to think about where your time is invested right now. So obviously people spend a lot of time sleeping. They spend time eating. They spend time in a job or in an entrepreneurial environment. Hopefully you love what you do if you run your own company. But if you're in a job, you probably spend a lot of hours at that job. Or if you're in a relationship, you probably spend a lot of hours, a lot of time with the person you're in a relationship with. If you don't, you have to ask yourself why. Are you avoiding it because it sucks? Do you need to fix it? Do you need to change it in some way? Right? And almost everybody could make some sort of changes in all of their important relationships to make them better.
Well,
We're not necessarily saying you need to end them or anything.
No,
like that.
absolutely not. I think I'm a real believer that if whatever brought you together, if it said this on CBC when I was on that for 2 seasons, when something brings you together in the first place, it's probably still there. It may be buried under a lot of crap, and breach clout debris and stuff, but it's got to be dealt with.
Absolutely. Now, there's this
You didn't comment. I just said breach clout.
You did?
Yeah.
I didn't even notice. That's
fantastic.
Horrible. Okay, that's really weird.
Such a
Because
despicable
you know what I
term.
was doing, Mike? I was thinking
Adjusting your
about what
breach
I was
clout.
going to say next. Yeah, just. All right. And actually, side point, if you're a very good listener, it means that you're not thinking about what you're going to say next. You're actually paying attention to what the other person is saying and being in that moment, which is difficult for me sometimes. Mike's thinking about what he's going to say right now.
I know I'm being a really good listener. But Chris, how do we find that elusive balance?
Okay,
we always say, whatever happened to that old tranquility we used to know? And you don't want that tranquility to disappear out of your life. But
that's why we say
want it
it's
to
a
be
reminder.
days of victory, though. I mean, these are freaking days of victory right now.
Victory.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's talk about it, because there is no magical formula that we can say, all right, if you're in a job that you hate, here's how you get a job you love. Or if you're in a relationship that's crap, here's how you make it better or enter a relationship that you really enjoy. And by the way, when I say relationship, it could be you have a boss. That's a relationship too. You have a boss who's crap, and that's part of why you hate your job, and therefore you need to change the job so that the relationship changes, because you can't necessarily just get your boss fired or whatever it is. A lot of people hate their bosses. Well, if you're working for somebody who's a total idiot, then it's probably part and parcel of the whole relationship change equals job change. And there's no magical formula that we can give you to say, okay, here's how you go find your dream job.
Although,
That's up to you to figure out what you want.
right now, there is a magical formula for having a better life.
Yes.
And the number one thing is, since you have a finite amount of time available to you, as we all do, invest in yourself.
Exactly.
Invest your time in yourself. Be the best you can possibly be.
So we're now talking about the idea of taking yourself from where you are to where you want to be. So you have to know the answer to that magic question, what do you want?
Right.
And so in all of these aspects of life, whether it's the quality of your shoes, the bed you sleep in, the people you're hanging out with, the job that you're in, the quality of the food that you're eating, the quality of the exercise that you're getting, the quality of the entertainment that you're watching, whatever it is.
Right.
What do you want? Mm-hmm. Are you really happy with these things? 80-20 your life. Where is it that you invest your time and your energy? Are you in love with what you're getting right now? And if not, how can you make it better? And then invest in yourself. Invest in that change.
Remember Lee Iacocca? He said his key for getting what you want out of life. He said, first of all, identify what you want. Mm-hmm. Make it clear. He said, and there's a man who did a tremendous amount of great stuff for Chrysler. And he said, second thing, find out what price you have to pay to get it.
Oh, yeah.
And third,
that's a good
pay the
one.
price.
Yeah.
So that's how you get whatever you want out of life. Find out what it is,
what you want,
identify it,
figure out the price,
and then
pay the price.
That's
and
it.
That's a really nice metaphor, because obviously people, hopefully listening here, understand we're not necessarily talking about money. Right?
No,
sometimes it is
not.
pay the price. You want to wear nice clothes? Well, I guess you could sew them yourself. You could cut your own hair and make your own clothes, but you probably won't be happy unless you really know what you're doing.
I forgot you even knew that.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna let you tell that joke in a moment. But the bottom line is, with something as simple as clothing, you're probably just going to the right store. Or maybe the price is you've got to hire a fashion consultant, or you've got to do the research to understand what's going to make you look great and feel comfortable, right?
Right.
But mostly it comes down to money, let's say.
Okay.
Other things just come down to learning. Like if you want to start a business, you've got to figure out what it is you don't know and then learn it. And it'll be partly money, but partly freaking elbow grease. Now go ahead and tell us.
No, that stupid line. I was just doing a hypnosis mentalism show in the 70s, and there's a guy in the audience just mouthing off constantly. One of these people think they're part of the show when they're sitting in the audience, and he looked kind of odd, and he just wouldn't shut up. And finally I just said to him, "You cut your own hair, don't you?" And he said, "No," and everybody laughed. And I said, "You cut your own hair, and you make your own clothes." And everybody just roared, and he shut up after that. It was such an odd thing to say to him, Not that there's anything wrong. I cut my own hair now, but I use a buzzer thing. It's easy, but I don't make my own freaking clothes yet.
I love that line. That is such a great line.
Okay, well, let's talk about, first of all, if we're going to invest in ourselves, I think we have to say that health has to be one of the primary things that we deal with.
Yeah, and everybody has different values, right? And so going through a values hierarchy exercise is going to be an important part of deciding what it is you want to focus on. For Mike and I, health is really important because we don't want to be chronically diseased. We don't want to be in pain.
I want to throw off some of the DNA markers of my parents. Yeah.
Yeah. So we do focus on things like eating healthy, working on our mental health constantly, right? Always laughing.
That takes a bit of work.
The fact that Mike and I are business partners and get to laugh like idiots and 5-year-olds all the time is pretty good for our brains.
It's a blast to work with your best friend.
And then we exercise.
And
right?
we exercise. Not together. Not to say anything wrong with it. Not to say anything wrong with it. But yeah,
we exercise constantly, like make it a part.
4 times a week, constantly. Yeah, so you just jump away from the microphone and do 60 push-ups.
I just realized how that sounded. That's pretty funny. We exercise regularly is maybe a better way to put it. So. And actually, we preach this stuff and we teach it, right? So our Wellness Academy, which is on our website if you're interested in looking it up, is all about diet, activity, and the mental game, right? DAM. What is that damn that's holding you back? And sometimes people go, "Oh, you shouldn't use metaphors like that. It's going to sound like DAMN to people. They're going to hear it that way, right? Damn, like damn health." Yeah. Well, no, I don't care. Yeah. Guess what? I live the kind of life that if somebody's going to get pissed off that I'm using that acronym DAM, DAM, and they're going to get offended, I realize nothing actually happens.
What's that sound I can hear?
Oh, the sound you were hearing is my dog playing with a... Yeah, but the good thing is the microphone's not going to pick that up. So everyone listening is wondering what you're talking about. Yeah.
All right. It's all so clear. So clear.
And the beauty of recording a podcast in our own home studio.
Now, the other thing is, Chris, when people want to make shifts, want to make changes in their life, I think it's really, really important not to, and I'm being totally serious here, not to look at the totality of everything that must be done because it can just be overwhelming.
Yes.
And I think you have to take the baby steps. What are you able to do next? You know the old adage, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Yeah. And it's the same. If you look back to what we actually did with this business, mostly you in all the figuring it out and me providing a lot of absolutely stellar content. But it's all so clear, so clear.
No, you're completely right. I think back to 2007 when I was given a copy of Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Workweek, and I thought, well, I'm in this job as an investment analyst, and I don't want to do this forever because while, yes, it pays well, and I love being able to do things like go to fancy investor meetings with executives that I would never otherwise be able to hang out with, brand name CEOs, that's really cool. But it's kind of sucky in that I don't see my kids very much. I get home late at night. My life is just basically owned by my employer.
Right.
I don't like that. So Tim Ferriss's book really inspired me to want to change my life. Hence, we started MikeMandelHypnosis.com together. And at the time, we were literally I was at the office stuffing CDs into an envelope when people sent us money on PayPal, right?
Literally taking them to the post office.
Literally, I remember when I talked you into this, I said, hey, I just think it would be a good idea because when people are going to your stage hypnosis shows and at the end of the show you're selling your recordings, some people just didn't bring cash. So what do? They go home and they go to Google and they type Mike Mandel and they find nothing. They find your agents who are booking you.
Right.
You don't have a website. Let's create it. Well, that was a baby step, right? And it was really inspired by me saying, hey, okay, I have this job that in many ways I love, but in other ways I actually hate. I don't want to do it long term. And here's this other thing that was put into my lap, the Tim Ferriss 4-Hour Workweek idea. Yeah. Why don't I see if I can figure that out? Okay. So that was baby step to become an entrepreneur. Set up a website, had to learn how to do, stupid things like set up WordPress and add a PayPal button to a website.
And now we have a fully secure website, don't we?
That's right. Finally, our website is HTTPS, the S being for secure, so it's using SSL, Secure Socket Layer, I think is what it stands for.
We have our certificates.
Which is amazing. But point being, I did not know anything about any of this, but I was determined to figure it out. And I just figured, okay, I could sit here and analyze it to death and never take action because Mike, how are we ever going to move into, for example, downloadable products?
Analysis paralysis.
How are we going to create videos? Where are we going to host those videos? How are we going to deal with customers and, email campaigns and all of these things that go into business that I had no idea? How are we going to collect taxes legally?
And this was 2007, you said?
How am I going to
So we've been doing this 12 years?
Yeah, pretty much.
Buddy, that's amazing.
Well,
So if you ask me,
I think 2008 is when we actually...
okay, so say 11 years.
Yeah.
If you'd ask me, it feels like about 6 years.
Yeah, it's crazy.
A grueling,
But
horrible 6
we
years.
literally took this business from just an idea of, well, we should be able to distribute Mike's self-hypnosis recordings online to, hey, how about we take the entire 5-day architecture of hypnosis class that was taught in Toronto, and actually at the time was when you were still teaching with NLP Canada. We weren't even doing the classes together.
No.
And eventually I thought, well, what if we were to put together an online version of that class? And that took us quite a lot of effort.
Yeah, especially
And
since I thought you were
honestly,
insane. But we did so many freaking videos.
I'll give you guys another quick point on this too. At the time that we made the decision to launch the Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy, I didn't even know how I was going to film all the videos. I had no idea how was I going to set up a nice background that would look good. And that's why actually today, if I watch some of the early videos, I think they're crap. Other people look at them and go, oh, that's great. I've advanced my knowledge so much
standard has gone up,
since then that my standards are higher, that I look and go, oh, that's just lousy. I wish we could redo that again. And that's the metric. You should have that feeling. That's an indicator of success. You've now gone past where you were. You've far past where you were. And you look back and go, oh, that was so horrible. Our first few podcasts.
Pause there, because that's a good point you brought up. It's starting to sound like there's a difference between comfort and stability and stagnation.
Oh, definitely. If you don't look back at something that you started doing years ago and feel like it was pretty crap compared to where you are now, then you haven't moved forward. You haven't made
Betty,
progress.
when I think back to some of my early hypnosis shows and early TV appearances, my first TV appearance was January 29th, 1975. In Edmonton on the Tommy Banks show, and I was on with Cab Calloway, the jazz singer, and John Davis, a bunch of other people nobody would know now. But I was so bad at what I did, so incredibly amateurish, that I saw it only about 2 years later in reruns, and the flinch factor was off. I was almost...
And you were brand new then, right? So that 2 years was a lifetime of progress.
That's right, yeah.
Right.
But we should be able to look back and say, oh man, I could improve this.
So those of you paying attention and who have studied any kind of NLP or hypnosis should recognize that we just threw a reframe at you, right? We are helping you reframe in your mind that if you're sitting there thinking, well, I don't know how to do this properly yet, we've just given you the key. You should feel like what you did in the early days was complete garbage. And that's how you know you got better.
Yeah.
You have to own that mindset that I'm going to look forward to the future where I look back to the past and what I did today, i.e. the past, was garbage.
Nice.
And now I know so much more. Just feel comfortable
That's right.
owning that and you will do wonderful.
And right now, Chris, I think we have to get a word from our sponsor in the Shizjig Corporation.
Hello, I'm Dave Shizjig, the founder of the Shizjig Corporation, and the lead singer and electric xylophone player in the heavy metal band by the same name. Today, I'm answering the questions sent in by our listeners to make you more comfortable about buying our fine products. The first question comes from Stanley Chappelle of Rhode Island, who asks, Dear sir, doesn't it bother you when you think of all the weapons you produce for the military-industrial complex? Surely even you have a conscience. Best regards, Stanley. Well, here's your answer, Stanley. The Shizjig Corporation is a very fine company. Even our weapons are 100% ant-proof, which in my book makes up for just about anything. Here's another question from Cindy Crestwick in Massachusetts. Cindy writes, Dear sir, I bought one of your office chairs lately and it was absolute crap. The only reason it was ant-proof was because the hollow frame contained about 5 pounds of toxic waste insecticide. How can you people possibly justify this? Well, Cindy, that's a great question, and one that we get asked a lot here in Colon, Michigan. And here's the answer you're looking for. The Shizjig Corporation is a very fine company, and all of our products are 100% ant-proof, which in my book makes up for just about anything.
Finally, a question from Brad Mervish in Owen Sound, Ontario. He asks, Dear Sir, we never had a TV until I was in grade 8. Now that I'm an adult, I find myself renting a lot of VHS tapes of the old Twilight Zone series. Why is that? Well, Brad, here's a very simple answer to that one. The Shizjig Corporation is a very fine company, and all of our products, including VHS tapes, are 100% ant-proof, which certainly makes up for just about anything. And so thanks for tuning in, and now back to the Twilight Zone with Rod Serling.
I think one of the key points that we need to get in here, Chris, is the whole idea of focus. And focused attention can really change anything.
Oh, this is a really important one. And in fact, years ago, we put a video up on our website talking about the power of why, right? And if you're asking yourself, and I think we talked about this in the communications tips. Yeah, communications tips mini-series, the importance of focusing that lens, that reticule of your mind
on the breach cloud,
on stuff that you want to change for the better, right? Rather than focusing it on the negative. You know, you always talk about the, why am I so stupid? Well, you hang around with stupid people and you watch stupid TV shows.
Yeah.
And you're not doing stuff to make your life better, right? So of course you're, dealing with problems there. Where we focus our attention is incredibly important, and the words that we say to ourselves in internal dialogue really matter. So that's why we talk about you have to know what you want and then focus your attention on those positives rather than the negatives. What else do you want to add?
Really, it's habituated, a lot of this. When we run into people who are habitually negative in what they say, what they do. I mean, a friend of ours, he eventually left his wife. They split up. It was a very sad thing. But one of the problems was her negativity just drove him crazy. He was an Enneagram 9 like you, the go-getter type like you as well. And he had a personality like you do. And the thing is, there was a clash between them because pretty well anything anyone would say, she would instantly find the negative and would talk about it in a really depressive voice. Literally to the point of, the four of us should go to a movie today. What for? We probably won't even get a parking spot. I mean, it was that bad.
Mike, this podcast is starting to really depress me.
Well, Chris, on a scale of 8 to 10, how likely are you to, let it ruin your life?
Yeah.
But yeah, change your focus. Change your focus, you change your life.
Actually, didn't we have a question from, was it Darren? Who we lovingly called Dr. Manhattan.
Who got the cards now.
Yeah, wasn't it him who sent in a question about how do you deal with negative people? Was it him or somebody else? It was about, I think it was
him.
A negative family member,
yes,
I believe.
It was.
I won't say specifics here. But it was, how do you deal with someone who is constantly negative? Well, you can ask them questions that lead them in a positive direction. You can just stop hanging around them. Now, you're not going to do that if it's your mother or your wife or your kids or something. You're going to encourage them. You can tell them stories. You can use the power of metaphor to get people thinking about the positive, to reframe their life, right? So there's all kinds of things that you can do. We're just saying, focus on the positive.
I really recognize and celebrate the power of human givens theory. And Griffin and Tyrrell put out some great stuff on this, and I highly recommend all the human givens books, insofar as Griffin and Tyrrell, two British psychologists, said that if you fulfill the human givens are two lists. They're resources we have as human beings, like long-term memory so we can learn from our mistakes, the ability to look at things creatively, the ability to step back, dissociate, and look at stuff from the outside. These are the human givens, the resources. And then there's the needs, too. Like, we need to belong to a social group. We need to have a sense of accomplishment. We need to go into flow states. We need to be able to have a sense that we are significant. And if we fulfill the human givens, then they say that mental illness becomes impossible. And I think we really need to find what the missing pieces are in our life. Is it social? Is it spiritual? Is it cultural? In fact, the cultural one is the one I'm always nudging you towards, Chris, as your 50s approach.
Yeah, you bastard. Yeah, that's true. I turned 45 this year.
Yeah, it's approaching, with alarming speed. And the cultural, I'm saying, Fill your life with stuff that prevents you from being a freaking machine. Be truly human. The arts, the culture, music, literature, poetry, these are the things that celebrate the human condition and give depth to our lives. I want to close with this, and then we should probably move to the empowering question. Horace Mann, there's Thomas Mann, but this was Horace Mann, was a great educator. He was a believer in public education and excellent professors to raise the standards of what education should be. And I saw this in an old TV show, a quote from him. Horace Mann said, and I quote, "Be ashamed to die until you have won some victory for humanity." Unquote. Isn't that fantastic?
Wow, say that again. That is powerful.
Be ashamed to die until you have won some victory for humanity. In other words, make your frickin' life count. When Chris and I get emails from people who say, I just did some mindscaping on my mom and all her anxieties disappeared. Or I was a therapist and I was doing this and this. And now I've learned to do this and I'm replicating excellence. We're thrilled.
Or just the people who are listening to this podcast and will email us.
Yes.
So many people. It's amazing because we just started this as a fun thing to do. We just wanted to get our ideas out there, and people email us and say, wow, these podcasts have really opened
People
up
have said
my
they're
life.
being life-changing. If
And
you
we're
apply these.
We never
chips.
really imagined that would happen. I don't think we probably hoped it would.
No.
But it's not like we knew it would.
And now we have 6 million listeners every single day.
Well, maybe not quite that many, but,
anyway.
but quite a lot, and it's awesome, and we love it when you email us. I want to remind you that when you send an email to info@mikemandelhypnosis.com, it actually goes to both of us, and we both get to read it, which is awesome, which is why when we reply, we will usually copy the other, so that if I reply, Mike will know that I've replied.
And did you see,
versa.
Chris, I got an email from a young man in Brisbane who wants me to work with him online with Mindscaping for a session.
Yes.
The problem is Brisbane is 14 hours ahead of us.
Yes,
so it's
we have quite a time change problem. That's right.
We're on Toronto time, which is Eastern Daylight Time now. Chris, why don't you set us up with that empowering question today?
All right, here is your empowering question pertaining to today's podcast. What is missing from my life, and what am I going to do about it today? What essential thing is not there for me, and how will I take responsibility and do something about it?
Nice. Back to action.
All right.
And I'll follow that with the Meta 5 of the day.
Which is a metaphor, but improved.
Even better.
Yeah.
Back in 1977, I was doing a lot of shows. And we were moving into the space show where we had the big set built. There was like a 2-3 hour setup time. I mean, it was a lot of my time was spent either on the road, doing shows, recovering from shows. And I will say my manager did a great job in getting me a lot of gigs. But I was being paid a flat salary. So I was getting paid the same if I did no gigs or if I did 9 in a week, which was the record at one point. And he'd say, we got 6 gigs this week. And I'm going, great. It was killing the goose that lays the golden egg. And as an 8, Enneagram-wise, when I get under a lot of pressure, I go to the worst of 5. I become solitary. I become antisocial. I don't know what I want. My emotions disappear. I can't find whether I'm angry or sad or whatever it is. And he worked me so hard, a lot of high schools and colleges. And I will say he drove me to all the gigs. He had a big Buick and he was really good at what he did. He was a good guy, but he overworked me. And I had yet another show and I literally could not face getting up and going on stage again. I just couldn't face it. And I just left a note on the door for him and said, I cannot be this person anymore. And it freaked him out. He thought I was going to kill myself, which is, I'm not that type at all. 8s don't kill themselves at all. I mean, it's not our thing. But the stress on me just from sheer volume of that kind of on the road, London, Ontario, Windsor, Montreal, it was just too much. And I've learned now to pace myself. And thank God I now have a job where pretty well every second of it is fun.
Because these are days of victory!
Yes, they are.
Thanks, everybody, for listening to Brain Software, episode 121. We have made it a long way from episode 1. Woo. This is amazing. Anyway, we appreciate having you as our listeners. We love getting your emails. We love it when you send us ideas, when you send us audios to include in the podcast, which we will move more towards in episode 122. I believe we have lots of questions to throw in there. And we just want to say thank you. Thank you for helping us to really just freaking love what we do.
We love what we do.
You guys are all a part of that, and we love you. All right. We will see you in the next episode.
Thanks again.
And Good night.
In the spirit of Bruce Springsteen, I'd like to do a little song for you. Right.
Da, ba, 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 da, da. Ba, ba, da, 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 da. I was born down in deceased person city. The first impact I took was when I struck the floor. Eventually became like a canine that's been beaten too frequently, till I spent a great deal of time just endeavoring not to get hit again. I was born in America. I was born in America. Just born in America.
That's horrible.
That was really bad.